Calvin Mitchell, and we are going to be studying in the parables. I would like to briefly recap where we left off last week, but then we're going to shift to a different parable, but there's a couple things I wanted to pick up before we kind of launch into our lesson for tonight. We're going to be in Matthew 25 tonight. But before we get there, let's pray. Most heavenly, gracious, and merciful Father in heaven, we're just so thankful for this opportunity to study your inspired word. We thank you for the many blessings that we receive each and every day. So much of your abundant love is shown throughout our lives in the way that you've preserved us and kept us. And we just ask, Heavenly Father, that our faithfulness is commensurate with the love that you've shown. We just ask, Heavenly Father, that you watch over us as we go in this lesson, that everything be pleasing according to your will, and that we will be able to be encouraged for the next couple of days until we have worship service. We're just mindful of all those who are dealing with illness and those who are dealing with the loss of a loved one. We know from your Son the compassion and love we should extend to each other. We just ask, Holy Father, you give us strength as we endure some of these life experiences. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right, so as a way of recap, last week we were looking at the parable of the prodigal son. And we talked a little bit about the fact that the prodigal son is a collection of what I call I lost something section, where there's multiple, starting at Luke chapter 14, if you want to take a gander, is where we start to see this discourse, if you will, about something lost, right? And so we see a lost coin, we see, of course, this lost son. We see there's about 5 parables, I think, that are related to that. And so we talked a little bit about that. Now, how would we define a parable? How would you define a parable if someone were to say, what is a parable? How would you define it? My mic runner ran out, so what happens when... All right. It's okay. I could use the steps.
Isn't it kind of like a fable, just like a story to help illustrate a point?
Yeah, partly. Oh, you said.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, you were positioned in such a way that I thought
I might
you were
as well
gonna
say something.
Yeah.
It's basically a story that is parallel to a truth, and it's told to understand in an understandable way, so you can understand the bigger truth, which is probably harder to understand than the story itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good collection there. Yeah, no worries. Until get a runner, I'll be the runner. So we talked a little bit about the prodigal.
I want to show my versatility.
Okay, all right. Well, don't show too much now, Will. It might make you permanent. We talked a little bit about the foundation of this discourse, if you will, starting with a contentious meal where Jesus was with the high society of the religious folks, and there ensued this discourse, right? As we know quite a bit, Jesus was challenged about whether or not he was going to do something on the Sabbath, which he was very well known to do, which is to heal on the Sabbath. We talked a little bit about what Jesus was going to be willing to do and has done before, and talked a little bit about what led up to this parable of the lost, or the parable of the prodigal son. So today, I would like us to kind of pull on a different string, and that is going to be Matthew chapter 25. Matthew chapter 25, I would like for us to break down this one a little bit. I think one thing that's very fascinating, not only is the synoptic gospels have a common theme, which is the story or the life and the miracles of Jesus. The way that Jesus, his parables are depicted, all have a real nice alignment to them, which really speaks to the Holy Spirit, right? And the divine authorship of the Bible. So Matthew chapter 25, this is again in the midst of a collection of parables. We have the fig tree, we got 2 servants, we got 10 virgins, and then we have what we consider, or we call now, the parable of the talents. So we're going to look a little bit into this today, and really thinking about how our last parable really spoke to the mercy, right? There was really a lot in there, right? And I think I was looking back and sifting through, I was like, I had like 3 sermons on that same, right? Kind of looking at it in different ways. But it really talks about the generosity of God's love. And you'll see a very common theme here as we analyze this. And so one thing that you're going to find as you go through here, the parables are very vague. They're light on certain types of details. And I believe that is quite intentional, right? Because if it said, there was a certain man named John, you'd be like, who's John? Right? And so the fact that it's very general really gets at, you're more interested in the context as opposed to the general thought. So here we have, I'm going to start at 25, at chapter 25, verse 1, the parable of the 10 virgins. And the parable of the 10 virgins, we get that one, and then automatically from 13 to 14, we got another one, which is very fascinating how the transition happens. But let's start to look here. So let's start with just the background, and then we'll kind of break it down a little bit. And so the way I have it set up here, we'll look through it a little bit, making some points, and then we'll talk about the main points of the parable and try to pull out some applications. And so if someone can read, can read Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. Matthew chapter 25, verse 14, and if possible, we can break if you can break at verse 18.
Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 18.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to read the English Standard Version. For it would be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money.
Yeah. All right, so let's start to break this down a little bit. first, we're talking about, so who's the main character in this story? Who's the main person? The man who traveled to a far country. And remember, we had a far country before, right? And so it's fascinating. It seems like this person didn't go to the same far country, but I wanted to kind of make that parallel that so we're not. Some people kind of get tripped up on that. But so we have this certain man, right, or a man, or a traveling man, however you want to call him. And this was very customary, where they would go off and they would leave their servants to their affairs. Right now, I'm not sure if we really. I guess you could probably have that if you are really wealthy. Perhaps you might have some servants in the house that would care for your affairs. And it was very, I think, even probably more recent. You would still have caretakers that would look after a home, when someone's away. So we see here that he had quite a few servants. It says that he called his own servants and he delivered his goods to them. Now, I think it may be helpful for us to talk a little bit about this idea of what is a talent. What is a talent? Yeah, it's a sum of money. Is it is it like a denarii or something? Yeah, right. And that's the key, right? Let's see. I see Carrie.
It's worth about 6,000 denarii, which is a day's wages. So
right.
It's a lot of money.
It's a sum of money.
Yeah.
Right, or a sum of currency, right? And so it's interesting that there is, again, I'll say, light details in terms of the monetary. But like you said, I have the same thing, that it's a monetary measure amounting to 6,000 denarii, which would take an ordinary labor 20 years. Now, if you remember the parallel of the past parable, the father had an inheritance, right? And the inheritance is what he gave to his son. So we have here this person of means, right? And he has something, right? A monetary value. So we don't want to miss that part. And again, ordinary labor, 20 years to get this amount of money. And so when you think about the magnitude of the importance of what he's got, or what he has, I should say, pardon me, it brings a certain amount of responsibility, right? If I've been working for 20 years, I probably would not give it to someone who I didn't trust, right? You would make sure that the person who you were to give it to was someone you would trust. And so in the ancient world, they had cupbearers, right? Why did it have a cupbearer? Right. That cupbearer had probably the worst job if they had a bad cup, right? Because they were the ones responsible with doing what with the cup? They had to taste the cup before the king got it. So if that was a bad cup, you're going to be down a bearer, right? Because the bearer going to drop down and the king be like, see, that's why I got a king. That's why I got a cupbearer, right? So there were people that were around to make sure that other people were preserved, if you will, or safe. But in this situation, these servants were responsible for the wealth, if you will, of this certain traveling man. Now, what's fascinating about this particular parable is how it's divided. the parables are not given equal, are not distributed equally. And at first you may say to yourself, well, why may that be? And we see in verse 15 that they were given, if you look at the last subset in that paragraph, it says, they were given to each according to his own ability. So what do you suppose that really means there? What's inherent in the fact that they were given these sums according to their abilities? Are their abilities the same? Yeah. We would be able to infer that there was something that was different about each of these servants. And so that distinction is really pulled out more as we kind of go here into the lesson. Let me just pause real quick to see if there's any thoughts or anything that you might want to add. Going once, going twice. Oh, Sister Jerry.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to where it says, verse 14. It says, for the kingdom of heaven is like the man traveling to a far country who called his own servants.
His own servants, yeah. Right, so
which means that there may be other servants, but he called his own.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want us to miss that.
Yeah, and the fact that he had servants means that we can infer that he's probably not down on his luck, sitting next to the gates, right? Right, given 5 talents. And we know what these talents are worth, right? So not only did he, I don't want to say gave them away, because we'll get to that, but he extended this or opened himself up to a vulnerable state by giving it to these servants. And he didn't give all of the servants the same amount. They all had different amounts according to their abilities. Now, a fascinating modern contemporary term. We don't use talents in that way. The English word we use, talents, generally means what? Your abilities, right? And so you can hold that there. Because we'll come back to that a little later. So when we look at the verse 16, the one who received 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5 talents. So the money that, or I don't want to really say the money, but what he was given, he was able to take that, trade it, and it's essentially invest it, right? If you will. And so he was able to invest that money and to bring something back. Now, does that seem unusual to you that someone goes away and they say, hey, I want you to hold this for me, and that when you come back, they have a certain expectation of what you might have done with the money, or that sum of property. Does that seem unusual to anybody? Is there anything that you think might be there? Let's see, no? Okay, all right, yeah. I didn't really have a lot there either, so I was just curious. All right, so anyway, so then okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's like you said, it's a little unusual because I don't think the parable states explicitly that there was instruction, unless I'm mistaken, to hey, go out and turn this money over.
Yeah.
But yet, when the owner came back, there
Right.
was an expectation.
Yeah.
In that something should have been done.
Yeah.
In fact, to the point where, I know I'm skipping ahead here.
Yeah, you're gonna tell us. You're gonna tell the whole lesson. See, the dentist is gonna extract my lesson away.
But so much so is that 1 talent guy was found to be wicked because there was nothing done with the talent.
Yeah. So there's a cultural thing there. I don't really know much about what that is, but it's clear that there was a cultural something that was happening there. I just thought it was fascinating. And perhaps I was just wondering if anybody had an idea of what that could possibly be. All right, so as we move on, we see that he was able to do something with the talents that he received. He got a pretty good return on the investment, right? Man, you get somebody 5 and you get 5 back, it looks like, right? So, yeah, right, so you essentially got 10 back, right? And so verse 17, it says, and likewise he who had received 2, more also. So again, I think Antoine's point is fascinating because there was an idea that you were supposed to do something with it. You weren't supposed to just hold on to it. There was an expectation that something would happen. And that's fascinating when you kind of think about how this kind of rolls out. Now, there's not a lot of detail given. I'm not going to try to make too many inferences, but I just think that's something that we should just observe. And when we get to the parable applied, I think we might be able to pull a string there.
I mean, what I take away from that is that they knew their master. They knew what their master expected of them.
Yeah.
It's just like us. We read the Word of God. To find out what God's will is, and what His commands are, and we know what God expects of us as His child.
Yeah, and I like that you said that because this is my own opinion. I don't know this for sure, but the fact that He called His own servants and that He trusted them with this, it almost makes it seem as if there was a relationship where He had an expectation that they would do something, or they've done it before, right? And so it's interesting, right? The guy with the 5, now perhaps he was a more savvy trader, and he was like, Carrie, you got me 5 last time. Let me give you 6 this time. Let me see what I get out of you this time. And maybe, hey, you know what? You're probably not as good of a trader, so I may not allow you to get the full 5. Maybe you're only going to get 2. But there seems to be an intimate relationship where they were familiar with what was the expectation. Good point.
I was starting similar kind of sentiment there. Verse 24. He also had received 1 talent, came forward saying, Master, I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you had not sown, gathering where you had scattered not. And the master repeated back, you knew this. So I think that I would agree that the servant knew or had a feeling for what the expectation would
Yeah.
be. But my reflection also is that Christ has given us a prescription about what is expected. This is a reference to the kingdom, and what's expected. And so what's the conversation going to be like with us when He comes back? That's what I reflect on a little bit.
Yeah, and you took a sneak peek at my lesson. I'm surprised you were able to read my handwriting. I think that is part of it, right? I think that's a major part of, there was an expectation, I think that was clear. And as we go a little deeper into the parable, we see that not only was there expectation, they were well aware of what that expectation was and His disposition to them not meeting that expectation, right? And so that's what makes this next part even more fascinating about this story, because it didn't seem like, hey, I made a mistake, right? I accidentally touched the ark, and you're right. This doesn't seem like something that could have been a mistake, and perhaps I might be reading a little bit too much into it, but in verse 18 it says, but he who had received 1, now remember, he only had 1. He had less out of the 3 servants, right? So he had a little bit, well, in comparison. And what did he do with that little bit that he had? You know, it's fascinating. I've heard that people who are rich are greedy and people who are poor are greedy for different reasons. Have you ever heard that before? People who are poor are greedy, and people who are poor are greedy, but they're greedy for different reasons. The poor person is greedy. Not all poor people, by the way. I'm not saying that. But. So don't go and walk over somebody's box and say, "You greedy guy, get away from here." So the person who's poor would be greedy because everything they have is of great importance, right? So they're not going to willingly give anything because they have nothing, right? And even if you see someone on the street, perhaps DC or something, right, and they have their belongings, they care deeply about those belongings. And you may say to yourself, why does he have that, I don't know, maybe a soiled blanket or something? But to them, that is a lifeline in the winter. Have you tried to, I remember when we used to do, when I lived in New Jersey, we had this thing called Midnight Run, and we would go down to Battery Park in New York City. And it would be so cold, and we would provide sandwiches, and we would do soups. And I remember thinking, how in the world could you sleep outside in the park? And I remember there was this one guy, he came up, and so we had clothes, and so the students would donate clothes. And the color of the jacket was, I would say, vibrant, right? It wasn't like, right? It wasn't like a girly color, I would say. I hope you're not offended by that. It wasn't like a color you would associate with femininity, but it was a light colored jacket, right? And the guy so he had no jacket. Now, this is New York City in maybe November timeframe, so it's cold. And so I said, hey, I got a jacket. You don't have one. And he scoffed. I was like, I don't want that. And I'm like, this guy is ungrateful. And he said, that jacket would make me a target. Because people would be able to see me from a great distance. And, you know, apparently people mess with people who are homeless, if you can believe that, and try to attack them and do things like that, or even worse. And so he did not want that. He said he would rather have something else. So we did find something that was a darker color, and he's like, I'm gonna have this for a long time, right? Now, that jacket was only in the van because somebody didn't want it anymore. They donated it, right? But that jacket was gonna become his prized possession. Then you think of the rich man who's got tons of stuff, but it's never enough, right? So they always want to get more. And you would think to yourself, well, why would somebody who's really wealthy be out here trying to cheat people? Because wealth is addictive, right? Wealth is addictive, right? You said, people always say, you know what? If I came into money, I would give it all away. No, you wouldn't. You probably wouldn't, right? I like to think so too, but you know, Alicia and I would probably be like, you know, the Lord blessed us with this. Perhaps he wants us to be better stewards, right? You see what I'm saying? How we try to rationalize things, right? Now we don't have anything, we'd be like, man, we give anything away, right? But that, like I say, two sides of the coin. So we see this 1-talent servant went and dug in the ground. Whose money did he hide? Whose money did it hide? What does it say? His Lord's money. Why not that traveler's money? There's some significance there, is it not? It's not his to give away. It's not his to hide, right? Essentially, you're stealing, right? So it's very important to see what is happening here, right? It's more than him thinking that the money would be safe underground until he gets back. That's not the conclusion I'm drawing. The conclusion I'm drawing is he had malicious intent to do something or conceal something, and we're going to see that a little later. Is there any thoughts before we go a little further? Okay. So if someone can read verse 19, and let's stop at 21. And then I'll try to speed up a little bit.
After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and sent out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you.
Yeah, what version are you reading?
NIV.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So now we see the master's return. Now, what's fascinating about this is it's almost as if there is a judgment, right? There's a time where they have to account for what they've done. And if you remember, the heading is the kingdom of heaven is like, right? So now we have this time of reconciliation, if you will, where the servants are now before the master or the foreign traveler. Let's use the master because it'll be easier for the application later. And they have to give account for what they did. Now, what's fascinating is there are different attitudes from different servants, right? What is the first attitude that we see, that we kind of glean from the 5-talent servant?
Yeah, he was proactive.
He was proactive. Yeah, he was proactive. We see that he was proactive, and it sounds as if that his work was indeed successful, or met the expectations that were either laid out or expected. Did anybody have anything else to say before we go on to the second one? Yeah, and can you go ahead? Why? Yeah, go ahead, brother. Say that again.
Sounds as if he felt honored. You know,
Yeah.
he gave him 5, which was a great deal. You wouldn't give that to just anybody.
Yeah, and perhaps, and again, it sounds as if, like you said, that he's like, Lord, right? Like there was excitement there, right? Lord, look what I did for you. You trusted me with this, and look what I produced, essentially, right? Now, maybe there's a little more theatrics in what really happened, but that's kind of what I like to believe. All right.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Satan has convinced a lot of church folks that the church is about talk only. But this brother was proactive, and he did more than just talk.
Yeah, and I think his stewardship and it was really what he had pride in, right? I think it was clear to say that he was happy that he met whatever those expectations were that were bestowed upon him, whether they were inherent or whether explicit or inherent. And so in verse 21, it says, the Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You are faithful over a few things, and I will make you a ruler over many things. That is pretty powerful. Why is that powerful to you? Why does it resonate with you? Does it resonate with you? I don't presume. All right.
One of the things I always think about whenever I read this parable is, first of all, in verse 15, where it says, it lays out exactly how much he gave to each servant, and then it adds, to each according to his ability. So there would have had to be some sort of expectations. Otherwise, there would be no point in divvying everything out according to ability.
Right.
But then, when you have the servants who have produced more, one of the examples that I can think of off the top of my head as a parent is when you give your child a task to do, like, hey, go take out the garbage or clean your bedroom or something. And if they do well with that, then the more they grow, the more you see that, okay, well, now you're capable of taking on more responsibilities, which can, in some cases, result in more reward.
Yeah. And I love that. And so I actually thought of a similar one, but not necessarily the parent one because of our household. I thought of at work, I have found the more you do, the more you get in terms of an assignment. Now, it could mean more reward, or it could just mean you do more of the same work and they continue to pay you.
I just kind of want to focus a little bit on the one talent man.
Yeah.
A couple things I see. One, I see he never took ownership for the talent. He started off by saying, it belongs to you. So he hid it. And then when he's confronted, he clearly lays out, you're a crook. That's what he said. He says, you're a crook.
Yeah.
He says, because you're trying to reap from places that you've not even sown.
Yeah.
And now you have expectations of me.
Yeah.
You have determined that my contribution is not very good because you only gave me one. And so therefore I got a problem with you. So it appears to me in this whole parable that you have a real affront going on between the one talent man and the owner.
Yeah.
Because he's basically saying, I'm not going for it. I'm not going to act like the 10 talent man. I'm not all happy. I'm none of that.
Right.
You need to deal with the reality of this situation. And it's really explosive when you really look at it, because you got one guy on the team who just is not playing.
He's not a team player, right? No. And so let's pull that string a little bit, unless you see another hand, Bob, Brother Bob. Let's pull it. Got some. I hope they're not offended by that. No.
No, everything's good. I actually was thinking about God in this, in that on the issue of ability, it says the master knew or gave them according to their ability. And I'm thinking of ability as far as natural ability, you have a certain inclination, or I have seen you all work. I know who has what. And that's a harsh reality. That's a pretty tough lesson.
Yeah.
But it's real. And so what I get from that, for me, is the compassion and humanity with God, that I know my people.
Yeah.
But I still have an expectation of you.
Yeah.
Whether you are here, there, wherever you are, I know you and I have a certain expectation. And so I kind of look at it in terms of the kingdom, that all of us have a duty and a job based on the talent that we have been given. There's an expectation for all of us. So there really isn't a bench warmer in church.
Yeah.
There just isn't.
Yeah, and so I believe it was God's discourse with Job, right? It was Job's discourse and it was God's discourse, and God said to Job that I knew you before you were even what? Formed, right? So God knows us in a special way. I want to pull that string a little bit because I even wonder, now it doesn't necessarily say this, if the master knew the proclivity of that one talent person, right? maybe there was something about him that said, I don't even trust you to have anything, but maybe I'll give you one, right? In the same way that there was skepticism on the other side, sometimes our weaknesses are known too, right? And even when we think that we should be a two-talent person, we may really just be a one-talent person, right? Go ahead.
Okay, so this part of the verse, it always just felt kind of weird to me the way it was worded. I don't know if just because 21st century doesn't understand some of the things, but the part where he says, "I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed." So based on the conversation we're having, this kind of seems to imply that some people think it's like a trust issue thing, or like you said, that God's like, oh, only take one talent, and the guy's like, no, I deserve more, or something like that. I mean, when I read it, I always thought it was kind of like he was kind of scared of the master for some reason, and just the master was strict and he was afraid of I don't know, displeasing him or something, or he's unsure of himself or something. So what's the proper way to interpret that part, because I never really 100% got it.
You got it.
It's interesting that they both had an assessment of each other.
Yeah.
The one talent man says, I knew you were a hard man. But if you look at when the master repeats what he said, he did say, I reap where I haven't sown, but he never said I'm a hard man.
Yeah.
Because he had an expectation, but it was fair.
Yeah.
Because it was based on their ability. So what he gave him, he had the ability to use. And then when you look at the master's assessment of the servant, he called him wicked and lazy.
Yeah.
Not just lazy, you wicked and lazy.
Yeah. And so it goes back to that character of the person who got one talent. There was clear that there was a more intimate relationship where he knew, so for instance, if I have a cousin who's a thief, you don't want to leave cash laying around, right? Even if they haven't stolen in a long time, man, a nice wad, it might relapse, right? And if you don't want to part with that money, you're not going to leave it around, right? And so it's Joe, you go. Oh, okay. Yeah, you can put the money away too, right? Yeah. Look, you see him coming.
I just want to say that the person that had the one talent was just making excuses why he couldn't do what needed to be done. It's like dealing with people in whatever field you're in. If they don't want to do the job, they'll come up with every excuse under the sun why they can't do it. I haven't been trained how to do this. I've never done this before. But the one that got 5 extra talents, he didn't say, I know you're a hard man. I went out and got 5 more, double what you gave me. So it goes to show you that a one talent person just didn't want to work.
Yeah. There was definitely a character issue.
Oh, yeah.
With that one talent guy, right? It was, and I love the way that you use an excuse, right? And he tried to justify his error, right? Now, we don't know his intentions. I think it was safe to say that there was already skepticism on both sides.
I'll try to stop now. But, from a human nature standpoint, we always look at things like it was 3 of them. I wonder why. Let's get into I wonders. Mm-hmm. I wonder why he didn't give them all 3. Mm-hmm. God doesn't operate that way.
Yeah.
He gives according to favor.
Yeah.
And he looks at us because he knows us. And so therefore, the man that got the 1 was obviously determined that this is what you can handle. But our egos oftentimes cannot handle that. We're walking around saying, but Calvin got 5. Mm-hmm. You know what? I am better than Calvin. Mm-hmm. I'm hiding this.
Yeah.
I'm not participating. I'm not playing. But you could make a contribution if you initiated your one. But he didn't. He just simply said, I'm not playing.
I'm not playing. Is that 5 minutes left, or are you cutting me? Oh, she got her hand up for a question. I didn't know. Like, uh-oh. You got 5 minutes left, brother.
No, I just wanted to point out that Matthew 9:37 says, then he said to his disciples, the harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few.
Are few.
Right? So even though we're part of God's church, we are the church. A lot of us are not working. Just simple as that.
Yeah. That is man, I was going to piggyback. Oh man, that was such a good segue.
Mine is going into that as well.
Okay,
that,
I'll keep it light.
It's interesting to me, and we have talked such that I think it's commonly accepted for the parable. Everybody was in. The one who got one didn't say at the beginning, you know what, I got one. I don't think that's fair, so I'm out. All three are in on this.
Right.
You consented when you accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
We consented when we were baptized.
Mm-hmm.
You're in.
Yeah.
And so there is an expectation for everyone at any level or any talent that you have.
Yeah, and I think, what you said, 1 minute? All right.
Yeah, so what I would like to say is the one who was given the one, the two, and the number of talents that were given to people, the way I see it is the use of that talent. The use of that talent. The person who was given one misused it.
Misused it, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, he dug the ground and just buried it, thinking that, okay, when my master comes, I will just get it back. So whatever talent that you are given, make sure you use it.
Yeah.
And when you are using it, use it to glorify the Lord.
Yeah.
Glorify the Lord with whatever you have been given. Don't use it to hate one person. Don't use it as a basis, as an instrument to suppress one person. It's just one, but you are using it in a way that does not please God.
Yeah. And so that was one of my takeaways. Be faithful, using the opportunities for service, which you have been given. Diligence is rewarded, and determine your talents. And be honest with what those talents are. And so that'll be the lesson for tonight. Let me close in prayer. Most heavenly and gracious and merciful Father, we just thank you for this opportunity for us to be able to study your inspired word. We thank you so much for the wisdom that we find interwoven in these parables, where we're able to extract things out and be able to make some applications. Lord, we love how you've designed these parables for us to be reflected in all of them. And we just ask, Heavenly Father, that through this study we were able to see things that we may need to improve, or challenged by things that we've read, so that we are better servants for you. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Hi, this is Ricky Cook, one of the ministers here at the Laurel Church of Christ. We're glad you've chosen to watch our video broadcast. We'd also like to invite you to join us for in-person worship. We have worship services at 8 a.m. and another at 10:30 a.m. every Sunday morning. We also have a worship service in Spanish at 1 p.m. Sunday afternoons. Bible class is on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. And on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m., we have Bible class in both English and Spanish. Please know that you're always welcome here. We look forward to seeing you.